Good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Yes, I think so. Welcome to our Opening Doors panel. Thank you so much to Fora for giving us this wonderful space, particularly Ella, who's done so much work sorting everything out for us. And I'm really excited to hear from our panel tonight, so I'm not going to talk for ages. However, if you would like to give us a donation, we have a card reader around, and we would also be very grateful if you went on our website, if that's preferable. This Pride Month, we'll be so grateful for anything you can give us. Thank you so much for attending and enjoy the panel.
Woo! Woo! Okay, wow, my mic is on, just like that. How's everyone doing? You good? All right, happy Pride Month, yay! It's weird though, isn't it? Because this month does feel different. Previous Pride months, I've been very much covered in rainbows, covered in glitter, feeling fabulous. It does feel different. It feels more heavy. Introducing myself, my name is Ben Hunte. I am a global correspondent for Vice News. Prior to that, I was the BBC's first LGBT correspondent. I've given you such oh, thank you, thank you.
Come on.
Thank you, I'll take that. I've given you some journalistic bangers, such as the Equalities Minister going on an anti-LGBT rant in 2018, Kemi Badenoch, that is, calling trans women men, and saying that she didn't believe in same-sex marriage. More recently, I've looked into the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which is a group that's supposed to be upholding all of our human rights and actually seems to be working against trans people now. That's basically me. I travel the world and report on LGBT stories, and I've just flown in from San Francisco and I'm absolutely exhausted. But this is important, so we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna introduce my panel. So, in fact, no, before I do, I would like to say thank you to Fora for hosting us in this beautiful space.
Thank you.
Can we please give it up for Fora? And if you would like to look into some subscriptions and memberships for Fora, you can do so online. They've also got other events exactly like this taking place over the course of this month and beyond. So please do look into them, because this is really a fabulous space that they've given us, and it's an important topic as well. So thank you for that. So I'm going to introduce my panel. I've got Angela Trail, who is working for Opening Doors London. Started in 2021, began volunteering to support the training around Pride in Care, and representing Opening Doors at meetings of Age UK London. Please give it up for Angela. We also have Don Juan, a multi-talented drag king who sings, raps, acts, hosts, and does comedy like a pro. I like this, it's cute. They are now being referred to as Don Juan off the telly. Love this. Yes. As they were recently cast as the live voiceover artist introducing Joe Lycett on the comedy talk show Late Night Lycett on Channel 4. Give it up for Don, please. Woo! Woo!
Off the telly.
Now, Jumbers, I love that you're obviously legit out in this space, but whoever wrote your bio sent me the tiniest line about you. So all I've got is finalist on RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 4 and Sink the Pink alumni. Jumbers Blonde is a performer, DJ, and agent to performers for many years.
Oh, well, I mean...
You take it?
I'll take it.
Round of applause, please.
Or Jumbers off telly.
Also off the telly. And Kenny Ethan Jones is a writer, advocate, and public speaker. He's best known for making history by being the first trans man to front a period campaign. His advocacy is focused all on things trans, but he focuses on menstruation, body politics, mental health, and intimacy. Give it up for Kenny, please. Okay, so I want this to be an inspirational panel. I would like us to all leave feeling inspired and enthused about all things Pride and LGBTQ related. But at the same time, I want this to be deep, because there is so much going on I feel like people aren't very aware of, especially when it centers around trans lives. So hopefully we can all learn something this evening, and I do want to ask my questions, obviously, but I want to get onto your questions as well. So if anything kind of triggers something in your mind, then please feel free to put up your hand. We can jump into questions at any time. I'm not going to do like Q&A at the end. Whenever you feel like asking the question, put your hand up and I'll come to you. Firstly, phones off, please. Shame, shame.
Do you know what I thought it was? I'm so sorry.
Off the telly as well. Do better. So, firstly, I want to talk about young you. Let's talk about that. What was it like growing up as you, Kenny?
Let's start with me.
Yes,
indeed. Quite heavy, okay. For me, do you know what? Back when I transitioned, it wasn't really like a known thing to be trans, right? So there was never this kind of like friction. It was just like, what's that? And I'd be like, oh, well, I don't I don't align with where I was signed at birth, and this is who I am. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And I was usually met with like curiosity more than anything else, where I feel like today it's more like hate or like question. Not necessarily now, but in like trans people in general, especially in the media. But I was very fortunate. I went to an all-girls school. They said, you're so much like a boy, we're going to give you a boy's name. They called me Kenny, so I didn't actually give myself my name. Wow. A girl gave it to me. Thank you, Jamila, if you're watching. And yeah, I had a very like solid group of female friends and guy friends. And you know, it was all very much like when I came out, oh, yeah, we knew this. Okay, fine, hi. So it's Kenny now, yeah, okay, cool. So it wasn't this big like outing moment that I think you often hear about. It was just kind of a natural transition of the person that I was already becoming. And yeah, I was just very grateful to have those people in my life. And as I got older, things became more turbulent with medically transitioning, going through therapy and all those things. But all in all, I'm very happy with the man I am today and kind of, yeah, my upbringing, I would say.
And did you come out in school then, in the all-girls?
Yeah, so I was very dramatic.
Not you, dear.
I was so dramatic. I don't know why. I don't know. I should have went to like a theatre school. Anyway. Basically, I had enough of being at that school. I was like, I'm not a girl. I refuse to be here. And my school at the time had this like back gate, and it weren't too tall. And I was like, I'm gonna climb it in like defiance that I'm leaving, and this is my final day, and I'm over this. And so yeah, all the girls followed me, and I was like, no, he's not gonna do it. He's not gonna do it. And I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, bye everybody, it was nice knowing you. What? And I just literally climbed over the back gate, and I was like, well, we're done here. What? And I never went back to the school. To be fair, to add context, I was getting expelled anyways. But I wanted to leave in style, you know?
I feel like we're getting 20% of the story. So what did you do to get expelled?
Well, the saddest part is they didn't like the fact that I was trans. It was a Catholic all-girls school. And so it was very much, we don't like the person that you're becoming. This is not accepted. There was a priest there that was like, I'm basically the devil has my heart and all this kind of, yeah, it was just very traumatic. And they used the fact that my mum was sick with cancer at the time and her visiting hours was a specific time. So I would leave school an hour earlier each day in order to get the full time I could spend with her. And they used that as an excuse to kick me out when really and truly it was about me being trans. And so obviously at that point I had lost all respect, didn't care, and was like, I'm just gonna climb the back gate and just make a moment out of this. And it's so funny, right? This is the best part of the story. About 6 months later, they added an extension to the gate. So it's now double the height, and everyone goes, that's because of you. Security? Security. So I will take that.
Oh, goodness.
Big story, yeah, sorry.
Have you spoken to the school since, in all the work you've been doing?
No, but I don't know how true this is, but like I don't know why someone would lie about this. Essentially, there was a few years later, like they do, you know how schools do newsletters and things like that, about their best students and the achievers. And guess who happened to be one of them?
It's you, baby.
Why?
Yeah.
Even for the TV series, but
I'm ready. Kenny off the telly. I'm ready for the Channel 4 documentary. You going back to the school, cussing them out.
I know. I feel like I should. Apparently, you're greatest student, but you kicked me out, so we're here. But you're praising me as a student.
Well done for making out of there. So yes, we're very happy you're here. Jumbers, talk to me. Growing up as you, what was it like? Did you have role models, anything like that?
I did. I mean, my role models in growing up gay in Northern Ireland in the early 90s, just coming out of the Troubles, was quite a, a unique experience.
Yes.
Grazing up in Northern Ireland, because I grew up basically in a field. And it's not a lie, Northern Ireland is mostly fields. So I really spent a lot of my time isolated away from it because I didn't grow up in cities, so there wasn't other kids like me. And at my school, it wasn't until I went to high school. I went to primary school. My primary school was very small and very, very strict, like yours. It was the priest that ran it, and we got told all the time, especially people like myself got, questioned every day. And it wasn't until I went into high school that I was later in years in my high school that I met my group of friends, and we all found out that we were queer together. And I was really, really, extremely lucky to find other people like myself in my high school. But I did, like, people I looked up to. I mean, obviously back then it was RuPaul. questionable now. Not just because of off the telly, you know, all these other, you know, things that have come out. We will not speak of fracking right now. But yeah, I mean, like, people like Amanda Lepore, people like, you know, Lily Savage, you know, the glamour girls, that's who I was always drawn to. Sort of a, like an unattainable sort of like, I just always loved the glitz and glamour and the, you know, and I think that's obviously, I mean, it's obviously why I want to do what I do today. But it always felt so far away because I grew up in a field, essentially. And, you know, Northern Ireland is, you know, for everything that happens in UK's this side of the island, in Northern Ireland, everything's seems 10 years backwards. Yes. You know, it really does. And I don't know if anyone's ever been there, excuse me, but it really does feel like that. Even, I would say in the past couple of years it's changing, but then I might as well grew up in the 70s, you know. Especially, you know, you would walk down the street, you'd go into somewhere, someone would ask your surname to find out whether you were Catholic or Protestant, whereas I was not even getting that, but they were like, then I spoke and they were like, you're one of them! So that was, you know, I look back on it now and I wouldn't change anything because it's made me who I am today. And
Really?
yeah, I wouldn't, because, I mean, obviously for the difference of, you know, I'm one of the lucky ones, and I came out of it okay. There's most definitely people that had it far worse than myself. But my experience, I wouldn't change because I think it developed me as a person who I am today.
Yes. Did you find drag while you were in NI?
I did in Belfast, yeah, and that was also very interesting because it was at the time that the police would just come in and still raid the gay clubs. And
Nice.
One of my first times going to the, I don't know if anyone know, the main gay bar in Belfast is called the Kremlin, funny enough. And, take back that power. And it used to have, at the front door, it was my first time going there, and it used to have at the front door, above the front door, was a huge glass window. And for some reason, you could open it. I have no idea why. And there was a bar there, and we were sitting at the front window, and 10 people got glassed. Like, people just, like, threw bottles. And, like, they obviously could have added anything to that, but that was my very first night out as a gay person in Belfast. And yeah, like that, so that was my first experience, but it determined, you know, like, hearing the story of Stonewall and hearing that the drag queens came to the power, I think it's maybe why one of the reasons why I started, because I was like, the power lies within the drag queens, you know.
And did you find that later when you then did drag within NI?
Oh yes.
Yeah. You felt powerful.
Have you watched season 4?
So you did feel powerful in NI then, in drag. You didn't feel in danger at any point or anything like that?
Oh, 100% felt danger, but I think it's one of those things in my circumstances, it being that it's to rise up to it, or to not to retaliate, but to sort of find how you can either figure it out to get out of the situation, or let them know that you're not to fuck with. Sorry to use that language.
Use it. Use
it. Fuck with me. Go on.
Thank you. Dawn, what was it like growing up as you?
Oh, my word. So I have just been, as I've been listening to Jumbers and Kenny, there's so much to relate to. Particularly, I'm going to talk about Kenny's experience and how it relates to me, because I went to an all-girls school, and I had that experience of just being so back then it was like, I'm a tomboy, but everyone mistook me for a boy, and kind of, so bringing it right back to the present day, and I started in as a drag king in 2015, and one of the things that has allowed me or enabled me to do is accept that I'm gender non-conforming, accept that I'm non-binary, accept that I don't really fit into that box of a female or male. And growing up, that was such a challenge because I was constantly trying to be a girl. I didn't feel like a boy, but I didn't feel like either. And the fact that I was constantly misgendered. And at school, in my girls' school, one of the things that, because even though I'm gender non-conforming, I'm also a raging dyke. and still, you know, consider myself a lesbian and love women of all forms and, you know, and also non-binary. But in terms of my sexuality, one of the things that I embraced when I was younger was the fact that because I went to an all-girls school and I was the kind of boyish girl in the school, everyone loved me. Everyone wanted to kind of be like with me. So it was like, so that was quite like nice. I remember just giving all the fit girls my coat to wear. Yeah, you can wear my coat. It's like, you're my girl now. But the challenge of that kind of navigating life growing up. So I didn't really come out until my late 20s, really. It was like, I played the game of dating men, and actually, I mean, you know, we're all adults here, so sexually, I can still be attracted to men. Emotionally, women are, you know, my main kind of connection. So growing up, just having fun with men and women was great. But then there came a point where I was like, and so I defined myself growing up as bisexual, and then there was a point where I was like, actually, I'm not. And then now, in kind of really since performing as a drag king, I've more and more embraced being non-binary and being gender non-conforming, and kind of just being somewhere in between. There's like, I've spoken before on panels and I've talked about that. Sometimes when I'm, depending on where my cycle is, if I'm menstruating, I'll feel a bit more feminine. But then there's other times where I feel more masculine. Performing as a drag king definitely, as you can imagine, allows me to embrace my masculinity. Yeah. It also is a kick back to the people who were constantly misgendering me. Yes. And the kind of thing where I'd, you know, I'll go into a supermarket and someone would go, all right, mate, oh, sorry, love. So it's like, and I guess there's a certain amount, I'm now going to talk about a privilege that a drag king gets over a drag queen, which is really rare. But in terms of when I'm out and about as a drag king, I definitely don't feel as under threat visibly, because I kind of I just look like a fit bloke who's like walking around in a suit or whatever. So yeah. Whereas obviously drag queens can stand out more and can also, for example, if I'm like traveling from a gig to a gig in drag, I can just pass as like. But that's why I got into drag, because I literally draw on a tash and I look like a bloke. So I'm like, but there's definitely been a part of from growing up where I would constantly, I remember as a kid, people would go, oh, your son's so cute. I like, you know, and it's like, lots of people just constantly mistook me for a boy.
But did you like that or did you not like it?
No. So as a child, that felt, because it was used against me quite often.
Okay.
And I remember I've got a really early experience of a family wedding where I was asked to wear a dress and I was like, I'm not wearing a dress. And we had a big row, and then I ended up wearing some like white trousers that were like a bit smart. But it was just, there was this constant, and I actually there was a little phase of my life in my kind of, I don't know, about 13, 14, where I wore stillies and like little skirts, and I'm like, wow, was that me? Oh, wow. Because now it's like, there's no way. And I've also, because I've done some modelling and I've gone on to shoots, and people have gone, oh, we're going to put you in we're going to put you in a catsuit or something. I'm like, no, you're not. And I've had arguments on sets with people who have tried to put me into clothing that I'm like. So there's an element of now in life that I really embrace what I am now, that's somewhere in between. And because that language is relatively new, my preferred pronouns are they, them. I'm fine when people get it wrong because they just, you know, people slip up and it's newer language. I mean, it actually isn't newer language. It's been around as a singular term for so many years. But people actually, you know, using pronouns they, them. What annoys me is when people are resistant, because I do get people saying, they, what do you mean, they? I'm going to use some of that. So I'm like, so...
We're going to go into that.
Yeah.
We're going to...
So, yeah, that's where I'm at now. It was a journey, but now I'm like embracing my whole in the middle self, in the middle of gender self.
We love that. Thank you. Angela, what was it like growing up as you?
Nothing like this.
Really? Tell me more. What was it?
Well, I'm in awe because they were so brave, whereas I wasn't.
In what way?
Well, I hid. I hid all my life. I carried the secret with me for 55 years.
Wow.
And, well, I'll exclude the first 6, if you like.
Okay.
When I was just doing whatever young children do. So, yeah, I was... Once I was late 60s, early 70s, hadn't got a clue. The language, well, it didn't exist. Anything that was remotely what we'd call today trans was more for comedic effect.
Okay.
So it was you laughed at them. So again, it was like, no way, no, this isn't me. So I was in a constant phase of denial, hiding, shame, guilt, all those things, and I stayed there. So it became quite lonely to not feel that I fitted in, but I was doing everything in my power to fit in so successfully that, you know, times I could forget. Wow. So I did, and I carried that through my life.
Were there some spaces where you were able to be your true self?
No.
Wow.
No.
Gosh.
So, and yeah, so there were episodes where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I've got to come out, and then, no, I can't do it. There's too much to lose, and I was desperate for love, and I did fall in love with a woman, and we had children, and you know, when you have children, your brain goes to mush, and you're in just, it's so amazing. So there's no way I'm destroying their lives by coming out. Not
You thought it would destroy their lives?
Sorry?
Why did you think it would destroy their lives?
Because I've been so ingrained with the notion that I wouldn't be accepted, I would be hated, I'd be ridiculed, and that would rub off on them, and their friends would turn against them, and family would break up. And as it was, the family did break up, but that's because I actually was even more horrible. I had an affair, and with the most wonderful woman who I now kind of know that she was the woman I really so wanted to be like.
Wow.
And I idolised her, I adored her. And we did get married, but I did tell her about my feelings, and she's kind of said, well, okay, there's one rule. If you're going to come home one day in a dress, I think this is over, because I'm not lesbian, and I don't think I'd be able to deal with that. And I said, no, it's fine. It's all control, because this'll end it all. It was always the love would end it all. Other people being around them would mean I could control this.
Gosh.
And I was so desperate all my life to please people, because if I didn't have them accepting me, my life would be over. And I literally did think I would be dead. There's no way I would exist. I would have to end it.
Goodness me.
So I went through like that, and things did culminate, and I went into another one of the depressions, and she said, look, you're going to have to see a psychiatrist about it, or get some counselling, because I can't deal with your depression. And I was going, well, what depression? This is nothing unusual. So, and long story short was, it just opened out, and I had no control over anything at all. And here I am.
Wow.
Gosh.
Journey.
Yeah,
Goodness.
a bit of a journey, but
I was finding it really emotional. I'm not
So, just taking a step back into your story, would you say there was a moment where you thought this has to change? I need to tell people.
there were several times.
Was there one where, I don't know, like the first step outside maybe as you?
Yes. So with this other person, before we did marry, we did have a split up, and but that was relationships more with our other families. They weren't gelling. It was too pressured and all the rest. So, and I was living on my own, and I was just thinking, oh my God, I'm on my own. This is horrendous. And the defences crumbled. And I did go and find a bit of help, and I was directed to a trans group, and for a night a month, I'd go and visit and dress, and it was lovely, but it was still a secret.
Yes.
It was still a very big secret, because I didn't want my children to know. So then I got back with my partner before we married, and I went, right, that's got to go back in the closet. That's not happening. This is over. That's gone. And it has to go for the rest of my life, because I'm not throwing all this away. So I tried to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm here now, but this is not by design. I was desperate to not come out.
Ooh.
And I couldn't stop it, and it was seismic.
What does that tell you when we're hearing politicians talk about how they don't want young people to know about LGBT things because they don't want them to turn LGBT? You're coming out there, you're saying that there was no way that you could hold this back. This just had to be there. What do you think about what these politicians are saying?
Oh, goodness. I don't know what their agenda is. Why are they so vicious and nasty about it all? I just don't get it. Because the more kids know about it, even if, as we all do, we're all struggling at times. Well, what is this? Why am I feeling this? What is this about? Is it a phase? Is it something more permanent? Why do I not want to be what my genetics is telling me to be?
Yes.
Why is my brain at war with my body? They need to understand that people go through this.
Yeah.
And it's not unusual. I mean, it's a very tiny percentage, as we're led to believe, but it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to explore, to come out with, and if you want to change back, fine. I know hormone treatments and things like that can affect if you want to come back to what your body is saying that you should be. But people, I don't think they get it, that you don't do this by choice.
Yes.
It's not something that you're really in much control of. Well, I wasn't in much control, unlike these wonderful people who took control.
You're pretty wonderful too.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just saying.
I think you don't give yourself enough credit, because I think your journey has been remarkably brave. What you've made, the choices that you felt you needed to make, but you're here right now.
Yeah.
And that in itself is just the fact that you know, whenever it is that you've got to this point, you're here and you're sharing your truth on this panel, and I've just been fighting back tears because I've found your story so touching and emotional, and that's because of the bravery that you've shown in your life.
Yes.
So I think you need
Exactly
to
that.
acknowledge that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yes. On that, I would love to know whether each of you thinks that you're living the queer adult life that you expected that you would when you were little. Jumbers, are you living the queer adult life that you expected you would?
I think in many ways, yes. I'm very lucky in my position that I am as a person. You know, especially with my career and what I've been doing, but also walking down the street as you know, who I am. As a you know, as a white cis person, but like I think that there's so many other people in my life that aren't, so I don't take it too lightly of what I do or who I am. So I like to give back, especially like that's why I'm an ambassador now for Opening Doors.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially for Opening Doors, because they are an organization for the over 50s and for the older generation, you know what I mean? It sounds terrible when you say it, doesn't it? It sounds like the older generation. But in fact, unfortunately, we all do get older, and that is, you know, that is the thing. But that's why I chose to be an ambassador for Opening Doors, because we as queer people are not all going to have children. We're not, you know, and unfortunately, death is inevitable for us all. And as we get older, our pool of people around us gets smaller, and especially for me, I personally, I'm not going to have any children, you know, and I think about that in the future. I'm very lucky. I also have a gay brother.
Okay.
My one other brother is gay, but I've lost connection with all of my other family.
Wow.
So really, all of those kids, they don't speak to us anymore because of choices that I've made in my life, which I am fine with because that is who I want to be, and I'm leading a very happy life about who I am. But when I think about the future of who's going to take care of me, especially in this economy of whenever am I going to actually have a pension plan in the, you know, at that time? Am I going to have? Because let me tell you, drag is not cheap, kids.
You're going to be paying them wigs.
I'm going to be paying them 2 wigs. Like, you know, so I do think about the future, and that's why I really wanted to give back, and that's why I'm an ambassador for Opening Doors, because I have to start this process now. I have to give back. And I think the younger generation, even, you know, I'm 35, but they're, you know, the generation below me is so lucky about who they get to be now, and so of you know, things that not only our generation's done, but we have to remember the queer pioneers. We have to remember the people that came before us, who were the people on the front lines fighting for us, who got the legislations in place in the first place.
Yes.
So, am I living the queer life that I thought I would be as a kid? For the glitz and glamour, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? Meeting a few celebratoires every now and again is very lovely, but that doesn't change about what's going on in the world, and it doesn't make anything, it makes everything a little bit more scary, you know?
Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you. Done.
So I'm totally, I mean, I'm living an amazing queer life, but I didn't think that would be the case as a young person. I could never have envisioned being a drag king because it wasn't something that I was even aware of growing up. I just knew that how I got into performing as a drag king, because of being misgendered, and I was like, okay, take that, I'm actually gonna dress like a man and start performing. But I also, because I'm a live singer, I really love singing male songs. one of the other things that I do out of drag, because I've got 2 characters, and one of the characters comes from being excluded from school as well.
Why are you stealing my story?
And sadly, disproportionately, but unsurprisingly, young black kids have higher levels of exclusion over white kids. And so I was excluded because I was a really bad kid. And I was bad because I experienced lots of childhood trauma. One of the things that channeled, that came out was me being angry, and I used to fight a lot. And also a lot of the racism that I experienced growing up was like, so you're attacking me for being black, so I'm just going to punch you in the face. So I would be like...
Perfect maths. Perfect maths.
One of the things that stopped me doing that was that I found rap, and so I was a rapper growing up, and still rap now, but just because I'm a bit older, I don't rap as much. But I do teach kids how to sing and rap.
Come on.
And I work on like times like this and any areas of when we're celebrating diversity. So it could be Black History Month, it could be LGBTQ plus History Month, it could be Pride. And I recently did a workshop. Actually, no, I did 6 workshops in a school for International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia.
The whole bit.
And just going back to that conversation that you had with Angela about the resistance to talk to young people about LGBTQ plus issues and to create awareness. When going into schools and talking to young people as young as 8, 9, 10, 11, one of the stories that I highlighted with them was the Breonna Joy murder.
Yes.
And talked about the fact that that young girl's life should never have been taken. It was a hate crime. We know based on, even though the police are still investigating whether it was a hate crime, based on the history of bullying that she had experienced, to then suddenly be attacked unprovoked by 2 other teenagers and then be killed is truly horrific. And for me to be in front of these young people, in one day I taught 200, it was 6 classes of 30 young people. And in every class, I talked about the fact that now statistics are showing that as many as 1 in 4 young people are unsure about their sexuality. There are high numbers of them that are unsure about their gender. It's not just a decision that someone goes, oh, I'm going to change gender, or I'm going to, I am this. It's about them understanding that it's okay to be who you are.
Yes.
And then it's really okay to move through your life knowing that, maybe you're different to someone else, or, if you're experiencing gender dysphoria, then you need to be able to talk about that. You need to be able to have the conversations and to feel safe to be able to speak to people and, to be able to move through life freely as the person that you should be.
Yes.
And it's so simple. It's like somebody wants to be their true selves. Let them live their truest and fullest life. Let's not suffocate them and decide that they have to be this.
You think it would be that easy.
Well, yeah,
but
you would.
In the UK at the moment, it's not that easy.
And that's the thing. So there was resistance in the fact that some parents had told their young children that they couldn't come into the sessions.
Yikes. What?
There was a young boy that was covering his ears.
Oh my God.
And then left the room. But on the whole, the majority of the young people were really asking questions and really positively engaging in the information. That's all it is. It's just information. It's knowledge to know that actually if you get to a point in your life where you have these questions or feelings or whatever it is, then you just need to know that it's okay and that you can talk to someone. And also for the other young people to know that if it isn't them, how do they support their friends? How do they
be an ally.
support other people? So we talked about pronouns, we talked about being pronoun positive. It was just really lovely to have conversations with young people who were really enjoying getting that knowledge. There was no, there's no kind of, oh, I'm going to turn you into something, because that's not how life works, as we all know. So I think it feels the things that I'm doing now in life, representing as a drag king, being the first black drag king on Channel 4.
Come on.
Doing the West End, a 3-month stint in the West End as a drag king. I am doing the most, and I am trying to just represent and send a message that it's okay to be who you are, because as a young person, I didn't feel like I was okay being who I am.
I love that.
Now I am proud of everything that I stand for.
Good. I love that. I'd like to talk about what's going on right now. And I'm hoping that each of you might have one thing that you'd like to inform the audience about that's happening in relation to trans lives. Because mainstream media is not covering LGBT stories in the way that it needs to. And I can tell you that as someone who used to work for the BBC and go into these meetings on a daily basis, fighting to get into a running order for a news program, whether that was on radio, whether it was on TV, whether it was like a slot online on the website. It's very difficult to make LGBT stories matter right now and for them to reach an audience that they deserve too. So there's a lot that you're missing out on, but our panel is going to help you. I had a very interesting conversation with Kenny just before we started, where I said, Kenny, I want you to bring up one thing that you want the audience to know about. And Kenny said,
I haven't looked at the media for 2 months.
Hasn't looked at the media for 2 months. Why is that, Kenny?
Because everything's just hate trans people.
There we go. So with the amount that's going on right now in the UK media, it does feel as if there is a constant attack on trans lives. How does that feel? How did it feel to get to that point where you had to just block out the media altogether?
So I think I've been doing this career now for 5 years. And in the beginning, it's very turmoil because you're literally just trying to exist and everything is like, no, hate you. And it's just, I think the most dangerous thing that is happening in society today is the spread of misinformation because it's wildfire. Like the things that I see online, I'm like, who made this up?
Like what? What kind of...
Just things about like trans women trying to get into women-only spaces to basically rape women. Like, name one instant that that's actually happened, because statistically you can't. But you can name statistics around trans women facing abuse in toilet situations or changing spaces. So it's like you want to use biology against trans people and these facts and things like that, but when facts are against you, you don't want to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
So it's that for me that really kind of like irks me and gets me angry, because it's like you want to use the statistical argument, but actually when the statistics don't no longer prove your point, no, let's not forget about it. No, this happens. Like, like drag queens are telling stories to kids and making them gay and all this.
We're groomers, big groomers over here.
And it's like, where does this come from? There's no statistics for it. There's no proof. And it just got to a point for me that I'm very far along in my transition. Like, there's not much I want to do. Like, I'm very happy with where I am. But I think about the younger trans people growing up and the stuff that they have to see. And it's that angers me, because it's just like, why would you want to transition?
Ooh.
Why would you feel comfortable? Why would you feel safe in doing that, knowing that this is basically going to be what people are saying about you, not as an actual individual, and know nothing about you other than the fact that you're trans. And now this is your life, this is your reality. You're going to be seen as a rapist. You're going to be seen as a woman that just has autism and is confused, as they say about trans men. Or if you're non-binary, you're just blatantly confused. Like, why would you want to actively step into that life? And so for me, it's just like, I have periods of time where I'm like, I don't want to listen to this, because it's not doing anything good for my mental health. Being up to date only serves me in my career realistically, but not good for my actual mental well-being and like personal. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, there comes a point where I have to choose me.
Yeah.
And so clocking out of social media is when I'm choosing me. And that's not to say, I know for my career I have to pay attention, and I want to, because I do want to serve the fight. I want to, contribute. But there comes time where it's like, nah, you need to think about yourself. Like, you're not in a mental place to take on this work right now. There are plenty of other amazing advocates out there that will stand forward when you can't. And I just have to, I think that's the one thing that I really love about the trans and queer community. I know that if I step off for a little while, there's one behind me, let's go, ready. Do you know what I mean? Just ready to take on that fight and support the community. So it's like, I think as well, just around, kind of going off on a whim here, but like just that hustle culture, you always have to be there, you must post everything. No, relax.
Yeah.
Self-care.
Yeah.
Sit down, do nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's what you need to do sometimes. And then there's fight, stand up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do all of that. But I think you just, for me, it's about knowing when to step into which role and like be intuitive with that. And so for me, that 2 months is now because I'm focused on things in my life that I don't think that would have too much of a negative impact on what I'm doing. And so I've decided to clock out.
Do you think there's anything that the audience could do to support you in that, well, being able to read the media again, being able to engage with what's actually going on?
Close down all the bad ones. I think it's just challenging misinformation when you see it. Like if you know something's a blatant lie, or do you know what? Let's not even take it as far as that. If you read something and you're unsure, do the research first. Don't believe the first piece of media that you see. Because I think that's also the thing with social media now. Like, information's so accessible, you read the first thing, you're like, this must be true because it's on this page. But no one's verifying these things, you know? And the social platforms, they say that they are, but are they? And even so, what's their agenda?
Yes.
So it's like, it's not unbiased kind of information that you're receiving. So always just kind of go into that mindset of, is this true? Question it. Do you know what I mean? And I know that that's probably asking for 5 more minutes out of your day, but 5 more minutes out of your day to be right and to, do you know what I mean, be doing the right thing and standing for like marginalized communities, I don't think it's a lot to ask for.
Thank you. Let me go to, in fact, Angela, I'm going to ask you the same question. Yes. What is one thing that you'd like the audience to know about what's going on right now?
The media would have you believe that everybody hates trans people. And my experience is completely the opposite.
Interesting.
My experience, I mean, yes, accept that I'm in the white middle class privileged position, so my exposure is not the same as some others. But from my experience, the vast majority of people are very accepting, very kind, I mean, enormously loving and supportive. And for some reason, there is an agenda of a minority who are trying to tell people that they are the majority view, and they are not. And every time we attack them back, my view is we're doing what they want.
Oh, yes.
So we're giving them the oxygen that they are desperate to have. And there's a lack of responding back. You can stand up to them, I think.
Yeah.
But it's more a case of present positive messaging. Explain, there's some great love in this world, there's some great joy. And the more diverse people are and our societies are, the richer our societies are. And I don't mean just culturally and socially, I mean actually economically.
Yes.
We're richer, so the greater the diversity, the more prosperous your society is going to be. And put out there and investigate and look for the examples that there are that are creating this wealth of joy and also money, which seems to matter. So,
It does.
so I would say counter it with the positive. Don't turn and smack them and tell them what a bunch of assholes they are for having their views. Just tell them what is the reality. And they are the minority, and for some reason they have an agenda that's trying to stir up more support for them by confusion, misinformation, and so on. I don't know why it's that way. I honestly don't understand. You could say power, you could say some religions, but I don't even, I just don't get it. Honestly, I'm nonplussed by it, so let's counter it. That's what I would say. don't believe it. It's not true.
Yes.
And they're pushing it and trying to provoke us into responding.
Yes.
I love that. Can I add to that? I've always said to people, I think that you should meet a trans person before you judge one.
Oh, yeah.
Just meet someone. Because you'd be very surprised. Especially now where I'm so cis-passed and people meet me, they're like, you're trans? What? Like, you're so normal. This is not what I expected. I said, yeah, we're just regular people. Just, like, I do washing up too. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not what the media says I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
People expect it to be like rolled up.
Yeah, I don't know what they're expecting.
The mask off.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And like, did this bitch have so much facial hair? I'm like, yeah, I have more than my brothers and my dad. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, sometimes genetics just line that way. And, you know, I think as well, trans people are funny. Right? Because there's just so many unique stories that you hear as well that I just think is really weird and wonderful, and I love things like that. So when you meet a trans person, it's just like, oh wow, there's actually a lot here. And you're just a great person. It's like, but if you just base it, judge on any subject, on any person, do you know what I mean? Until you meet that person, I don't think you should be able to have an opinion.
Love that. Thank you. I want to see if there's any questions in the audience first before I move on to mine. I can keep talking, so I can keep on going. But if there's any questions that you have you want to put to the panel, not yet. Anything? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. Start thinking. I would like to talk about Pride Month. We're seeing that every company on social media is splashing the rainbow. It's great to be gay and bi and trans in this month, apparently. Do you think the organizations showing that support is enough? Jumbers.
Well, blunt answer, no. I mean, from where I'm coming from, and when companies approach me for working with them in Pride Month, because obviously they'll only go to the queens that have been, or the people that have been on television, or the people that have the high social media following.
Yeah.
They will only interact with us. They will not go. They will not go to ordinary people. They will not go outside of that bracket because they think that we are the be all and end all, that we know everything. Absolutely wrong. I know quite a few of them. They know shit all squared. And except for how to take a good picture. But when it comes to these companies, I mean, for me, how I'm coming at this, I see all these brands and ads. I seen one the other day for H&M.
Yeah.
And the money that they've spent on that campaign, albeit well, although the people that have been in it, there's people from Pose, Aquarius in it. There's a plethora of people in there who all are currently doing very well in their careers. That is not what I'm saying. Commendable, obviously. But what I want to see is companies and organizations, corporations, I don't want to just see campaigns of these famous people that are trans or that are, I want to see a community. Yeah. I want to see real people. I think it's unobtainable sometimes for kids and even for, yet again, going to say older generation, for to look at these beautiful campaigns and only put the model criteria looking people into these campaigns. It's not realistic. If a company like Dove is putting real bodies into campaigns, why is it when it comes to Pride season that it's just the model girls that get to be in these campaigns and make even more money? You know what I mean? It's not realistic to the community. It's not realistic to, and it feeds into that because it's on social media and because it's it just feeds into people's anxiety, into depression, it's like you can do more. You can go and find not just queer-led companies to find other models. You know, there are model agencies, there are people out there that can find people within the community to represent the communities correctly. I just don't feel, obviously it's a great starting point, that's not what I'm saying. There's a lot more work to do, and I think they're just going for the social media endeavors. They're going for the followers. They're going for who is the highest following person that we can get into this campaign so that it gets their outreach. I feel like we get more outreach if the community was actually involved, because a lot of those people are really not people for the community, because I've met them.
Hey.
Aquaria.
I can't. Don, What say you about this?
So I think, I mean, it's all so performative over, you know, June starts and everyone's like rainbow, 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 just everywhere. Which, as Jombas says, I see, I mean, there's a lot of what Jombas said that I completely agree with. It's a starting point because highlighting the fact that it's Pride and that, you know, it's a time to shine a light on the LGBTQ plus community. But we are not LGBTQ plus for 1 month of the year. So it's like, and I think that along with bringing just real people into campaigns, I think also there's work to be done, or more work that these organisations could do behind the scenes.
Okay.
To actually just bring in people to create more understanding about, you know, all of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, the understanding around being trans, being non-binary, being, you know, what it means to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. A lot more of that kind of groundwork, as opposed to just putting a rainbow flag on your building or putting a few stickers around. And I think for me, because I get a lot of bookings at this time, which is great, I'm making my voice heard as much as possible. So I always take it as an opportunity to talk about the fact that Pride is still a protest. I do so many Pride performances and I love it and I love all the celebration. But as we've just seen in Uganda, there's been a reverse in the law. It's just the fact that homosexuality is still criminalised in so many countries and that trans people are still being persecuted and murdered and also feeling, you know, not feeling like they can move through life. So the suicide rates are so high. It's just, I think when we think about the reality of what it can mean to be part of the LGBT plus community, that can be actually quite dark and quite sad. And I think some of that needs to be talked about more.
Yes.
As I said, when I went into schools and talked to young people, I talked about Brianna and I talk about her story with so much pain because of the fact that she was a child. And it's like, is this where we're at in society? Surely. And the fact that that wasn't immediately investigated as a hate crime, it's just, you know, let's just take a look at what is happening.
Yes.
And let's just create a safe space for people to grow and just, you know, live their lives.
Well, that's
As I
what should
said,
be
it's
starting
that-
in schools, really. It's none of the companies and corporations.
Yeah.
It really should be beginning in schools.
Yeah.
I mean, is it Scotland that is the first time that they're teaching LGBT history?
Scotland got it going on.
Scotland's got it going on. Let's just all fuck up to Scotland.
Know what they're doing.
You know what I mean? But like, that's where really it should be starting. Like, the history should be taught there and then, you know.
Yes, I agree. I want to see if we've got any questions. Any questions? Nothing yet? Okay. Audience, get it together. I want to, oh, here we go. Oh, go for it, yes. Hey.
Hello. I suppose I'm one of the corporates. We put a big pride flag up, etc. Like every June, and I walk in, I'm like, oh God, here we go again. But there's this really disturbing trend, particularly in America, of deplatforming pride flags. Like Target's taking all this stuff down, and Starbucks is kind of walking into Labour, Starbucks places and physically taking down the pride flags, etc.
Yep.
And I suppose it's a question of, is it better to have at least some kind of visibility for them to just not have any platform whatsoever? Obviously, we want them to do more. That's the end goal. Like, we want them to be completely supportive of our community in their spaces, but also, yeah, it's quite a disturbing trend that we're seeing in America at the moment, particularly. And I always think that UK is only 10 years behind America, and there is absolutely a reason why the same arguments are happening in America as they are in the UK, and we're not experiencing the rest of Europe, for example.
Yes, it's an orchestrated campaign for sure. I do think it's interesting, and when we talk about corporates jumping on Pride, and a few weeks ago I was in Namibia for a story for Vice, and I asked them the same question like some of the people that I was speaking to there, and they said how blessed you are in the UK to even have this as a problem that companies want so badly to invest in the LGBT community, but they're pumping rainbows out across all of their social media and stuff. We are in a very blessed position to be able to have that. But I think both things can be true. And I think there probably is just a bit more, I don't know, a bit more feeling, a bit more thought that needs to go into stuff, especially this year, while we're aware of the attacks that are occurring in places that we assumed were done in terms of LGBT rights. It was finished. The UK was done. Like everything was achieved, sorted, and we do seem to be going backwards. Angela, when you're seeing these campaigns, especially now in you're out and you are your true self, what do you feel about them now, and how did you feel about them when you were seeing them when you weren't able to be yourself?
I took it very positively in that it was a recognition that LGBTQ plus people exist and we're worth spending time on. Now, yes, there's a lot of marketing going on around it. So companies are putting the rainbows up because they know there's customers there that think very highly of this, and it will generate sales and image and brand image and so on and so forth. Well, actually, that's the point. Whether or not the corporates, the boardrooms believe it or not, they're acknowledging that there is a groundswell of support for LGBTQ plus people and their rights.
Yes.
And I take that as the real positive message for seeing, and I love seeing all the rainbows and that recognition. I think it makes me feel quite proud now that, you know, I'm out and people genuinely care for me, which is obviously not what I expected. And so I think it's fantastic that they're doing it. Of course, there's always lots more to do, and yeah, it's not just for one month.
Yes.
It's but if everyone, their customers, want more, then make it known that they want more, and not just LGBTQ plus. All people of any form of diversity, whatever that is. I mean, I think every individual on the planet is different from the person they're standing next to. But it's, you know, let's open it up even. Let's say diversity, let's celebrate all diversity, not just LGBTQ plus. I think that would be amazing.
Thank you. I'm not even going to ask the audience if there's any more questions for now. I'm just going to stick on this. I'm just going to stick on this for the moment. I do want some more, so while I'm doing this, have a think. But I want to end with a positive message, maybe. What gives you hope for the future, especially when we're looking at trans lives? And maybe I can get you to stick to like a couple of sentences, like a brief synopsis of what gives you hope for the trans community. Kenny, I see your thinking face.
I'm probably thinking because I want to articulate myself perfectly. So give me a second.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you. Is anyone ready for that? What gives you hope? Jumbers, yeah?
I mean, I think the community that I'm in, being in a community such as in the club community, like Sig the Pink, it really feels like a community, and it feels like, as you said something earlier, you know, when somebody needs a moment to step back, someone else will step forward. And I really hope that the next generation that is coming up really takes a stand and gets there together, because a lot of them, from what I know, you know, from what I see, it's so social media driven, and it's so behind the camera, and it's so isolated, and I get that that's the way they've grown up. Yeah. But I hope that they have what our community has, and that they can join together and have rallies and have protests and have, because I feel like the way that things are going, it might die out, but I hope and pray that they can be as strong as our generation and come together and be together, because if it's not a community, what is there?
Yes, thank you. Don?
So I would say that actually I am really, I feel really positive and optimistic by Gen Z. I think the kind of that younger generation in their 20s, even some younger than that, are really like, we will not put up with this. And I think that, you know, that kind of, that newer woke generation is what's going to make all the difference. And I think, you know, it's so important to be woke. It's so important to be saying that actually we're not going to accept, you know, what you're telling us. We're going to do things our way. When we think about, you know, the terms for me like non-binary that have, and pronouns as they, them, are like, have only really come through in the last 5 years in terms of recognition. And I just think that is coming through more and more, and that gives me hope. And also, just to say, I always like to hear different views on the rainbow flags and everything with Pride. And listening to you, Ben, and Angela, when you talked about actually just seeing the fact that we are really lucky in this Western world, the fact that we're in the UK and we can move through, you know, life quite safely on the whole, and that rainbow flags and visibility is increasing, because that just shows, you know, that there is a power in the LGBTQ plus community. So just that visibility to grow as a starting point. More of that, please.
Love that. Angela, what gives you hope?
This gives me hope, and you give me hope, because you're here and you care and you're listening, and you will spread that in your conversations with your friends and families, and that gives me hope.
Thank you.
I found it.
You ready?
I'm ready. Ready.
Go in,
Whenever
here we
you're
go.
Right. The level of allyship. When I think about the first trans pride, and that being like, I don't even know, maybe 500 people in the park, if that, to now whole of central London kind of makeover, lockdown, no one's going nowhere. Like, I remember each year there's a point where I just cry, because I'm like, wow, every year it just seems to get larger and larger. And I think along with the allyship, it's like, we're getting into deeper conversations around, okay, like, how do we even, like, a lot of conversations I have is, how do we shift wealth? Like, how do we, make trans people's lives better? I remember talking about, like, celebrities and all these people who are earning lots of money. Most of them tend to start, like, charities or some way to give back to trans youth. And so for me, it's like, not to bring racism into this, but, like, white people being at the top, black people are now starting businesses, they build themselves up. That's how black people are becoming more and more wealthy. Trans people need to be doing the same optics. So it's like, trans people need to gain wealth. We need to create more wealth for the younger generation. Let's keep lifting up. And that's how equality, in my opinion, is going to be created. And I just think that lots more allies are donating, lots more, like I say, my point, if you ask how to be a best ally, it's give something to a trans person. If you're a writer, write a trans person's CV. If you own an event space, allow someone to host events at your event space. Like, give with the resources that you have. You don't need to be special. It doesn't need to be this big gesture, just whatever resources you have available. And I think that, over time, will lead us in a great place.
Make sure that's in your book.
I will.
Yes,
I shall.
I want a couple of questions from the audience. Couple of questions. Yes, go for it. Oh, the mic's coming to you, mic's coming to you. There we go.
Thank you. I mean, in some ways, it's not so much a question, but it's a memory, really, that, you know, I first came out in the 1980s, and times were tough. And Section 28 roused within, you know, real divisions between the women's community, divisions between lesbians and gay men, ignoring an awful lot of communities who are now part of a much wider alliance. And I think it's really important to remember that we survived that, we're stronger for it.
Yes.
We got through it, and we learnt to work together. And some of what happens now is as a result of that. We're in a better space. You know, in the 80s, it was unimaginable, all those pink-washing companies.
This is it,
And so I sometimes have a bit of a nostalgia for when we were a smaller subculture, and that was quite fun. but also, really proud that I've been part of growing up and working through those years, working with lots of LGBTQ plus charities, to get us where we are today. And I just think we're stronger together. We'll keep on working. We'll make the arguments. We'll celebrate and have some fun with it all, as well as a lot of good, strong campaigning.
I love that. Thank you. Well done. Very well done. Any other comments, questions? I want one person to round me out. Yeah, go for it in the back. I'm making you work. Sorry, boo. Here we go. There we go. Yes. Hey.
Oh. I also grew up in a field.
How'd you do?
And in my field, I would say that everyone is still also back in 10, 20 years ago. And especially like my parents' generation or older, and the people I speak to when I go home. How do you have difficult conversations with family members or people in your community where you grew up who believe the news and take what the news says as fact without like listening to
a good
actually what other
question.
people
This is a good question.
Yeah, how do you challenge that also as someone who's not necessarily part of the community and more of an ally?
Yes. I think this touches on your point, Angela, about, yes, it's very easy to say that people need to ignore what they're seeing and go against it. But actually, for a lot of people, they do think that the Daily Mail is gospel. They do think that BBC News is the fact and exactly what you need to know on a daily basis, and you don't need to know anything else. So what can people do to actually have those conversations?
I'm not sure I know the answer.
That's it, yeah.
Can I just say, I recently I performed at Birmingham Pride, which, I mean, I've got a really mild accent, you might be able to hear.
Just like mine.
But I've been in London 13 years, and one of the things that I noticed, and I live in, most of those years I've lived in Hackney, and I moved specifically to Shoreditch in 2009 because as a creative, I was like, right, this is the most densely populated area of creatives.
Yeah.
And I have completely grown within that, you know, sense of community and you know, knowledge. I'm constantly like learning things, and I'm really like, I feel like I'm really up to date with terminology and understanding, and I'm constantly asking questions to people. And when I go back to Birmingham, there is such a resistance to call me they or them. And also, because I performed in drag at the last Pride and saw some people I hadn't seen for years, and they were like, what's going on? And I can just see this sense of, and there are certain members of friends and family that I just avoid. I've got a Jamaican aunt that I just avoid, is all I'm going to say. She's very religious, and that's, you know, that's fine, but it's just, she's constantly like, do I go to church? Where's my boyfriend? When am I having kids? I'm not even engaging. So what I find is that I will come across people that actually feel like they're from my past life. And if they don't get where I'm at now, I'm not even wasting my energy and time on them, because I'm like in a different space, and I feel like you either understand, do the reading, do the learning, get up to speed with what's happening in present day society, or just get out of my space.
But do you feel, Kenny, I'm going to come to you on this, do you feel that having that attitude has almost got us to where we are now, where actually they have then ignored everything that's good and right about LGBT people, and they're kind of having their own conversations, which just so happen to be playing out in the mainstream media because those are the spaces that they take up. Kenny, is there a way that you've managed to have a conversation about maybe your identity or other people's identity that has been positive, that maybe started in a negative way?
I think I want to go back to your question, just because I feel like I can give more direct advice to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I like practical advice. I think, first of all, lean into the type of person you are. If you're able to have conflict, argue. That's my honestly, sometimes that's the greatest advice. If you're not, and you're not really confrontational, one of the ways, my friends really love this one, but like, I don't know, let's say the person is really into cars, like race cars. Take them to like an LGBT event that's celebrating cars. So there's like racing networks for pride. Take them to that. So they're still doing something that they like, but in a new way. And so they're kind of like, okay, well, I like this, and now I'm in this. And now you're here. The two have combined. And if you don't feel like you have the voice or the education level to approach it because you're not from the community, you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. People like myself or activists online or writers, books, buy them the book. Show them the links to the websites. Be like, you've said this, you read this here, here's something that's the opposite. Give it a read. So I think it's about delivering the information in whichever way is most comfortable for you. But yeah, books are a good option, sending articles, taking them to places that still feel comfortable but a little bit uncomfortable, and arguing.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's the point, is engage.
Yes.
Engage with them. Don't go into a raging argument with them, because that'll just put their backs up and they'll get even more entrenched in their view.
Yeah.
So, well, it's probably the same with any point of view and any difference of opinion. The best way is just to engage with it and say, well, explain what you mean. You know, you're saying these things. Explain it. Why would someone like me do those things?
Yeah.
Do you see me doing that? Why would I do that? You know, try and
reason.
reason, but just get them to. Gosh, we should all take lessons in being counsellors, shouldn't we? Get them to explore it themselves.
It's about meeting
Suddenly
people where
realise
they're
how wrong
at.
they are.
I think, like, there will be conversations, like one of the last conversations I had, festival, the guy was very drunk, I was also very drunk. And he was like, I just don't think that trans women should compete in sports.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, okay, why did you say that? Like, what's up? Why did you say that? And he was like, well, I just feel like there's an unleveraged advantage that trans women have. And I said, okay, why? Like, where have you read that? Why do you believe this thing? He's like, oh, well, like testosterone. I'm like, okay, but there is a level of testosterone they actually have to have to compete. So it's not an advantage. And then he was like, okay, well, bone density. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, then you can say the difference between black and white people. So black people shouldn't compete in sport then. And so it's about breaking down the argument and being like, no, this isn't right, this isn't false, and this is the reason why. And it just gets to a point where he was just like, wow.
Well done.
And then he said to me, can I buy you a drink? I said, you made me work, I should invoice you. So you can buy me a drink on that. But that was such a practical conversation. And he like found me on social media and he was just like, I really liked the way that you approached that conversation with me, because you wasn't shutting it down, although what I was saying was nonsense and I now know that, but you approached it in such a way, like even a language when he'd be like, you know, that used to be a man, and that's not the terminology that I would favor and I wouldn't use, but sometimes it's not, like, get over the language, like, it's better to exclude it for the time being, and then when they get it, it's like, no, that's not, you should word it like this. Yeah. So I think you shut a conversation down by, it's like, I don't know, reading something and being like, that spelling word is wrong. Yeah. You're automatically gonna shut down, so I think it's just meeting people where they're at, kind of just breaking down the argument and make it, like, being logical and also making them reach them conclusions by themselves, providing them infinite, not telling them, being like, but this is the case. And they'll be like, oh, well, maybe that is right. Do you know what I mean? Make them question themselves rather than I know I said argue earlier, but confrontation in a different way. Do you know what I mean? I just think you have to be sensible and calling for people that know more about you, know more about trans people, whatever, LGBT people, if you don't feel comfortable or know enough, you know, because there's always...
Love that.
There's always that, but ask permission first.
Thank you.
Can I just add a little bit?
We're over time. I'm trying to wrap this up. But you may.
All I did want to say is that I sometimes find, because I agree with everything that's been talked about, but I sometimes find that I haven't got the energy.
Yes, not everyone's an activist.
Yeah, and so I find myself, it was like the whole 2020 George Floyd thing, I'll find myself putting in so much of a conversation, and then I get to a point where I'm like, do you know what? I'm not giving you this energy anymore. You go away and do the reading. Yeah. I don't feel like I should constantly have to explain myself to you. And the last thing to add is that what disappoints me, and it disappointed me at Birmingham Pride, is that I will be within the community and there's still resistance. Within the LGBT,
really?
Yeah, within the LGBTQ plus, I say kind of community, there's still resistance to people being non-binary, to people being trans. It's just, and if
give me a profile of the person that's giving you resistance. What's like the average?
So the conversation, some of the difficult conversations that I had at Birmingham Pride were with cis gay white men.
Surprise!
And that's not to tarnish, because this is the thing, I'm open to everyone in our community. Our community to me is our community, but there are sections of our community that are exclusive and do exclude other sections, and you know, that whole being challenged by a gay man about being, oh, I'm going to start comparing myself, calling myself a helicopter. It's just like, I can't, it's just so basic. And for me, because I know that these people should be able to go away and get an understanding for themselves, I'm not giving them my energy. So I'm just like, do you know what? I'll give it to the young people who will take it forward and make the world a better place.
So what you're basically saying is we need to die out. Over to the next generation.
And do you know what? And what is really important for me is intergenerational conversations. I think it's so important.
Yes.
But I also just get frustrated by the people that are resistant to learning. And I'm like, pick up a book or, you know, Google it. I haven't got time.
Just do better. Great note to end on. Thank you. I would like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank our panel as well. Can I give it up for the panel, please? Whoop, 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 whoop. And a final note, please do check out Fora. Check out, I think it's foraspace.com. Did I get that right? Foraspace.com. Check out the other events that are happening here. It's incredible that this organization is putting on something like this to have challenging conversations in these times. So thank you for not just putting up a rainbow flag and being done with that. But yes, give it up for yourselves again. Thank you so much for coming, and drink.